Hello, my lovelies. Welcome to Head Over Heels podcast. My name is Shania Simmons, and today we are doing a special little episode because today is a special day, and I want to go ahead and honor the mothers today. So instead of doing a Sips and Scriptures episode, we are going to do an episode dedicated to all the mommies out there, okay? And I just want to go ahead and say Happy Mother's Day, not just to my mom or even to my grandparents or my mother-in-law or just anyone directly, in my life, but literally to all the mothers out there. I feel like moms carry such a heavy load in life. There is always such a heavy emotional weight, such a heavy mental weight. And honestly, mothers, there is so much on their plate all the time. And I think a lot of times it goes unnoticed, unrecognized, unappreciated, when in reality, women, I'm not gonna lie, we really are the backbone of the home. Obviously the man carries a heavy load as well, but today is not about the men, so we aren't even gonna get into it. It's not to diminish anything that the man adds, but we are going to focus specifically on mothers and what women bring to the home and just try to bring, honor and appreciation to all of the moms out there and just bring some positivity to the new moms, the old moms, the young moms, whatever it is. I just pray that after you listen to this episode, it just gives you a new special appreciation for your own mom, and you just want to go and hug her and love her a little harder and just appreciate her a little bit more. Because I know for me growing up, I didn't really appreciate my mom a lot. I didn't recognize a lot of the sacrifice, that she was implementing, a lot of the things that she had to lose, just to be a mom to me and to my younger brothers, and a lot of the elements of herself that she had to let go of just to simply embody the role of being a mom. And I am not yet a mom myself, so I don't fully understand all of motherhood, but I obviously have a mom. I have been, mothered by so many women, because I think that's such a beautiful part of life too. That God is so gracious that we not only have, a birth mom, but we have so many moms that step up and step into that role for us, whether it's a stepmom or an adopted mom or just a spiritual mom of some sense. There are so many women that just carry this natural essence of a mother, and they are just so loving and comforting and nurturing, and they just have this, mama bear type of spirit that just naturally wants to protect you and be there for you. And today, you should honor those women as well. If there is a woman in your life that is maybe not your mom, but is there for you in a mom-like type of way, go ahead and honor her today as well and tell her Happy Mother's Day. Tell your grandparents Happy Mother's Day, because, in a form, they are kind of another element of mothering to us. And I just want today to feel super special, and for all the mothers out there to feel extremely seen. I know on my For You page, it seems like everybody is pregnant. So I just feel like we are in a season where there is just so many more mothers rising up. And I think it's a very beautiful thing. And for the beginning of this episode, I kind of really just want to talk about my own personal testimony with my mom and I's relationship, just to kind of shed light on some of the different experiences that we had to maybe be a source of inspiration and encouragement for, an overall testimony of just overcoming, of forgiveness, of healing, and just coming out on the other side of some things. Because on the contrary to all the positive aspects of motherhood and being a mom and just having children, there is also a negative side. And I do think in our generation, there is such a rise of so many people, being like, oh yeah, I cut my mom off 2 years ago. We haven't spoken in so long. My mom was such a terrible mom. She was such a piece of garbage. I don't talk to her anymore. I'm no contact with my parents. Like, whatever. Like there is such a negative connotation to motherhood. And I do think as a whole, as a generation, as a society, we have lost the overall appreciation for our parents, not recognizing that is part of walking in our, biblical righteousness. We can't just pick and choose which parts of the Bible we want to adhere to. We can't pick and choose who deserves our forgiveness and who deserves our grace and who still deserves our love. And I think a lot of times that is what happens. And, I'm not going to shame anyone for doing that, because for a long time, I operated in the same way. I had a lot of resentment for both, my mom and my dad. And it's not to shame anyone, but it is to just maybe call some people out and, maybe call you to a different way of thinking, and call you to, not only understand your parents more, but also understand God more and what he is doing through even the brokenness or the tension that may exist between you and your mom, or even, you and your dad. But like I said before, I don't want to focus too much on the dads today. Maybe I'll do another episode for Father's Day coming up and then dive more into that as well. But for today, I really want to just focus on the moms and just bring light to the fact that, we need to love and honor them more. The Bible says that we should honor our father and our mother. And, we don't need to take that lightly. I think in our generation, we're just so focused on doing what is best for us and standing up for ourselves and being bold and being courageous and going outside of the norm. And all of those things are great in hindsight, but sometimes it can kind of lead to like a negative thing where we're so focused on doing what feels good to us and doing what looks good to us and doing what is so good for our feelings and our emotions, and we don't think enough about the emotions of someone else. We don't think about how our decision to do this certain thing is affecting someone else. And we're so focused on protecting our peace sometimes that we are not operating in the way that God would call us to, because God is not going to call us to cut everybody in the world off. Okay, God is not going to call us to hold on to this resentment for someone. God is not going to tell you to forgive and not forget. And I think sometimes too, we need to learn what it means to really test the spirit regarding certain things, because a common phrase that people say all the time is, oh, I forgive them, but I haven't forgot what they did to me. Oh, I forgive them, but I still remember how they did me. I forgive them, but I still know what you did to me on April 17th, 2009. You know what I mean? Like we're crazy like that. And I'm calling myself out too, because I very much so used to be the queen of what's it called, of holding a grudge and just holding on to this resentment. It was like I was not willing to let go of anything. It was almost like I had a book, logged of every person that has ever done me wrong, from the stranger in the grocery store to the girls in school to family to my mom especially, and to my dad. Now let's hold on to those two things. So in our generation, like I was saying before, I do think there is a lot of hurt and a lot of trauma that we tend to carry towards our mom and father. And I think we have these strong, passionate emotions, not because just no reason. It's because, these are the two people that we came from. These two people created us. So it's like when we are hurt by something that they did, or something they've said, or something they've, not done, whatever it is, we carry this hurt in such a magnitude for our mother and our father, because in our minds, if we go back to just our childlike mind and, get to the root of where the problem started, as a child, you are simply looking to your mom and your dad to be the very ones that love you the most and protect you the most and nurture you the most and guide you the best and teach you the best. And they are supposed to be the epitome of like the best people to you. So of course the hurt that comes from them is going to be so much greater, because your expectation of them is so much bigger. And on my journey of learning what it means to forgive and coming to see both my mom and my dad in a different light, it came to me acknowledging the fact that I'm putting these expectations on them that are honestly not fair a lot of times, because I would find myself maybe experiencing or going through the same things that maybe happened in the home with maybe a boyfriend or friendships, or regarding like a boss employee type of situation, and like maybe I would experience the same thing from another person and give grace to those people over giving that same grace and forgiveness to my mother. And let's just quit bringing up the father, because I want to really just focus on the mother wounds in this episode. And I think I'm going to title this episode Healing Your Mother Wounds. And I am going to do like a little special thing at the end to just really honor our mothers. And I'm excited for that. But I also want this episode to be just somewhat helpful and informative regarding, the wounds that often exist between a mother and a daughter, especially, or if you are a son that is watching this as well, maybe you are carrying some of the same feelings. And let me just go ahead and get into my personal story like I said I was going to do, but I kind of just wanted to give like some groundwork and lay a little bit of a foundation, just trying to highlight, the fact that you are seen, and I get it, but also just to tie up what I was just saying, just remember that your mom is a human being. Yes, she is your mom, and yes, maybe there are these certain expectations that you have for her, that you had for her as a child that she didn't meet, but please do not forget that she is just a girl. She is just a girl, and she had a childhood as well. She had to go through life as well. Like, we are all living life for the first time, and we have to honestly really unpack that in its entirety and recognize that we live in a generation where there is so much more language to certain things. We are so much more aware of our mental health, of our emotions, of, just how we are showing up for people in general. We just have so much more wisdom and opportunity and access and resources and just so much more that past generations did not have. So though that shouldn't be made to be an excuse for, bad behavior or bad decisions or, just wrongdoings and like, maybe these actions that are not the greatest, it's not to excuse them, but to just give you an opportunity to have more grace towards it. Because especially we could use an extreme example of the boomers. I think it was the boomers that were called the silent generation, right? So, they genuinely were not taught at all how to express themselves, how to show up correctly, and they didn't, there's not a lot that they really knew how to do in a way that was appropriate at all or made sense at all. So the way that they went about raising their children was far different than anything that we would ever consider okay now, because again, we just have so much more wisdom and knowledge now. So we should not demonize that entire generation because they just don't know. We need to learn what it means to give grace to them and to maybe, try to teach them a bit different way to go about things, and then also give them the opportunity to apologize and to move a little different, but also understand that even their way of trying their best and showing up their best is not going to be the same as yours, and more than anything, I just want this episode to just have an overarching, and I may have already said this, but just have an overarching theme of grace and forgiveness, so we can, learn what it means to be the daughters that God has called us to be, because our mothers, they love us, they love us so much. And I love that we have, specific days to honor them and to honor our fathers as well. Of course, I think that is so special. And, a lot of times days like this can bring a lot of pain to people. I know whenever I was younger, there would be a lot of, pain that I would feel regarding these different days that were honoring, the people in my life that I felt like, were not showing up for me in the very exact way that I wanted them to. But now as an adult, I recognize that they are just people, and they deserve grace, they deserve love, they deserve forgiveness, and I need to do my part in showing up for them as well. We can't always just be playing the blame game. Sometimes we need to take accountability and we need to take a step back so we are able to come forth in a way that is positive and impactful and just overall healing for everybody involved. Because one of my favorite verses in the Bible, it says faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. Love is so powerful, and honestly, you will begin to see that, operate in your life when you begin just showing up with love for people. Maybe the very same people that did you wrong and hurt you so bad and caused you so much trauma. When you go on your own journey of healing and overcoming and just learning about the goodness and grace of God, you are able to come forth with this overflow. God overflows and he fills you up with just so much, an immense amount of his love, so much so that you are able to pour it out into the people connected to you. And when you begin to do that, you start to see the very impact that love is able to have. Okay, so just kind of getting into my own personal testimony regarding my mother and I's relationship. My mom was a teen mom. So when she had me, she was only 16 years old. And as a kid, I never understood like just how much that in and of itself was a sacrifice that she was making for me, because essentially her choosing to have me was also choosing to let go of so many of the different dreams and aspirations that she had for her own life. She was choosing to keep me and be a mom, because obviously, making that choice, that is going to put a deterrent on so many of the other things, that she was definitely wanting to do. My mom wanted to go to school. She wanted to be a counselor, I believe it was. And I think that's so cool too, because I ended up growing up and wanting to be a psychologist. So it seemed like, I was fulfilling a piece of my dream, that I feel like had to have, came from her. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. But, my mom chose me. And I think it's so important to recognize the sacrifice that our parents make for us, and really just put it into perspective of how, awesome that is. Like, they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to choose that. You know what I mean? Like, that is a beautiful thing. So though my mom was incredibly young when she had me, she did everything that she could to ensure that me and my brother had a good life, because my mom was 16 when she had me and was 18 when she had my oldest younger brother. So, at 18 years old, she has 2 kids. And I mean, that is a heavy burden to bear, but still, even so, I would always consider my mom a very much just go-getter, a very make it happen type of person. We never went without anything. My mom always ensured that no matter what she had to do, she was going to make sure that we had what we needed, no matter the cost. I remember she would work these long hours, she would work night shift and just be exhausted. I remember we would stay with my aunt, and it just was a lot because there was so much on her shoulders. And there was even a time that we lived with my Nana, and she was just trying to make it happen and just figuring things out. And then finally, we were able to live in an apartment, and still she was just working all these long hours, doing what she could to provide for us and making sure that we had, everything that she could give to us, even if it wasn't always everything that we, wanted so badly. We never went without anything. And I think sometimes too, the way that we show up regarding, our earthly parents, it's like the same thing that we do with God sometimes. Because think about with God, you may get frustrated or angry with him when he didn't give you this, and he didn't answer this prayer, and he didn't give you this thing and this thing and this thing. But think about all of the things that he has given you, and just how true it is that you have never truly gone without anything that you have actually needed. And I think sometimes we place this expectation on God in the same way that we place this expectation on our moms or on, just our parents in general, to just give us everything we want all the time, not recognizing that there is a character development that is happening in that. Like, your parents can't just give you everything you ask for all the time, because that is probably going to breed you becoming a very selfish, very bougie, very arrogant, and very spoiled, adult. You would go into adulthood thinking that things just get handed to you, that you are just owed everything, that you just deserve access to everything, and that is just simply not true. There has to be a level of, kind of like an authoritarian type of thing that happens. Like, there needs to be order. that is orchestrated amongst parents and children, and there has to be, you know, somebody saying no to certain things and somebody guiding you and telling you, hey, you can't really go this way, or hey, you can't really do this thing, or hey, this isn't really a smart way to go about this, in the same way that God does that with us, and we don't always understand. And I think that was always, you know, a pain point that I had as a child. I didn't understand. You know, I didn't understand when I was hearing the word no. I didn't understand why I couldn't do this thing that I really wanted to do, or go to this place that I really wanted to go. And it led to me having, you know, this resentment, not only just for my mom, but just for authority in general, because I never understood, you know, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to listen to this certain thing? Why do I have to adhere to these certain rules? Like, nobody's telling me why. They're just telling me no, or they're just telling me I can't, or they're just telling me this can't happen, or whatever it is. And I was always so confused. I always had all these questions, not understanding that I was a child, you know, and as a child, there is a dynamic that needs to exist between parents and a child. You know, you are under submission to your parents. You are called to submit to their authority, and then in turn that helps you later on in life, because you also, whenever you get a job, you have to submit to the authority of a boss. When you get a husband, you know, you submit to the leadership of a husband. And even in regards to God, you submit to the authority of God. And I think that's one of the many beautiful things about God, is that he mirrors to us the different elements of our relationship with him in the earthly relationships that we have. And though God is not a woman, you know, he does have the characteristics of a mother, meaning that he loves us so much, just as our mother does, and he is there to protect us and to comfort us and to be, you know, this loving guide on this journey of life. And I think when I was growing up, I was so resentful of my mom, simply because she was just doing her job as a mom, and it would cause me to act in ways that were very disrespectful and just very disobedient overall, because I didn't understand why it was that I needed to follow these different things. I was always so what's the word? Not necessarily skeptical, but I was always just trying to go against the grain so much. I just wanted to lead my own life so much, not recognizing that everything that my mom was doing was overall for my own good, you know. And just growing up, finally becoming an adult and developing a relationship with God, it allowed me to look back and see my mom in such a new and a different light, because finally I was able to truly put into perspective all that she truly did for all of my siblings growing up. You know, I not only have one younger brother, but I have three, you know, and my mom is like the epitome of sacrificial love. She laid down so much of her life for us, you know, and from such an early age. And it's so surreal to me that she essentially missed out on a huge part of her, you know, adolescent, teenage years to give that back to us. You know, she missed out on what still really was her childhood to make sure that we had a good one, you know, because she wasn't even the type of mom to like go out and go party and to put herself first and to put, you know, her relationship with a man first. Like, we were always first in her life, and I think that is such a beautiful thing. And maybe if you were listening, you know, maybe your mom was also a teen mom, or maybe you yourself are a teen mom. I know that there are a few girls that I follow on social media that I know were teen moms, and honestly, like I always watch their content with such, you know, admiration, because it feels like I'm getting to like watch, you know, kind of like my mom's story unfold in the lives of other people, if that makes any sense. There's this one girl in particular, I won't say her name, but she is a teen mom, and I always make sure to comment on her posts all the time, and I tell her, I'm like, man, like, you are such a good mom. And she, you know, I think she was about the same age when she had her child that my mom was when she had me. And it allows me to have this level, more of a level of grace for my mom, like just seeing, you know, this girl's life play out in the way that she shows up for her child when she herself is a child. You know, it just, perspective is everything. You know what I mean? And I really just think it's a beautiful thing. But also, there can be a negative thing that comes with that. And I think growing up as well, there was like this blurred line of authority that existed with my mom and I because we were so close in age and she was so young. It kind of blurred the lines of mom and daughter, or like, are we just besties? You know what I mean? Because my mom, I think that was also kind of a good thing about her, is because we were so young, I felt like I was able to relate to her a lot more versus like some of my friends, their parents were incredibly old in comparison to my mom. And it was like, there was more of a disconnect between them. But something that my mom and I had is we did have this kind of like bestie vibe where I felt comfortable, just sharing so many different things with her and just giving so many parts of myself to her. I would pretty much just tell her everything like she was just, one of my girlies, and that was, I feel like, a piece of my childhood that I do not take for granted anymore. Maybe I took it for granted when I was younger, but now looking back, I'm so thankful that I had that, because it gave me someone to always confide in, someone that I knew would always listen, and someone that, just got it, that just really understood. And I think what is sad is so many girls, and especially daughters, we grow up to resent the very person that honestly understands us the most. Like, we came from our mom, and maybe we grow up and we spend our entire lives, trying to be so different. And I don't want to be anything like my mom. I don't want to be anything like my grandma. I don't want to be anything like my nana. I don't want to be anything like anybody in my family, not recognizing that we came from them. And when we learn to show up for them and to love them and to just be who we are called to be, we begin to see how much of who we are is literally because of who they are. Like, I am so thankful to come from my mom and to have learned so much from her, because she instilled so many amazing pieces of my character. She was always so bold and fearless in everything that she did, and that instilled, a level of confidence in me as a child. Like, I always felt, like I could just do anything. I didn't care. I didn't need somebody else's approval. I didn't need somebody else to, validate me in it. I didn't need somebody else to do it first. My mom was always like a trailblazer type of person, and she, gave me the confidence to be the very same thing. And I think because I watched her, love everyone around her so deeply and sacrifice so much all the time. My mom has always been the type of person where she has, $20 left and somebody asks her, hey, can I borrow $20? She's giving her last all the time. And I think watching her express that type of like sacrificial love all the time, not even just through like monetary things, but even just the very element of sacrificing essentially her life for me and for my brothers, it instilled that in me as well, to grow up and be so giving and to love so deeply and to be willing to sacrifice for others as well, and learning that, there is beauty in selflessness. Like, we are nothing without people. Like, I'm not gonna, just hold on to anything and do anything to just bring myself up and to just bring myself to this high honor and high glory. Because, what really do I gain from that? But, you gain everything from just giving everything. And that's not why you give, but it's just the very fact that when you give, the everything that you are gaining back is simply that love and that connection, and just the element of sacrifice, I think, is so powerful. And obviously, we see that all throughout the Bible. Obviously, the most obvious answer is the life of Jesus. Jesus sacrificed his life so that we could have one. And I think it's so amazing when we meet people and we encounter people and we just have people connected to us in general that model the character of Jesus. And I think in this season of my life, I've been the most intentional about who is in my circle and who I am in close proximity to. And I am noticing that when I'm seeking out friendships or even just close familial relationships, like, I gravitate the most towards the people that I can feel the light of Jesus in, and that I can feel the character of Jesus being modeled in. Because that is the kind of person you want to surround yourself with. Like, you want someone around you that reminds you of Jesus. And I think one of the characteristics in my mom that very much so is the model of Jesus is her willingness to sacrifice constantly. You know what I mean? And yeah, I don't know. I really don't know where I'm going with this episode, but I definitely just wanted to kind of honor my mom specifically and just kind of share pieces of our testimony and kind of how we grew up. So, you know, she was a teen mom. She sacrificed a lot. She did so much for me. And, you know, me just being the bratty teenager that I was, I didn't recognize it at the time. So I wasn't, you know, really honoring her or respecting her in the way that she deserved at the time. But, you know, as an adult, I've been trying my hardest, you know, to just heal and mend that relationship and really just, you know, experience and appreciate my mom for who she is and honestly who she's always been, but I just was not able to see, you know. And I think that's what happens a lot of times with a lot of us. You know, as a kid, we're so blinded, and as kids, we're honestly just so selfish, you know. We don't really have the ability to think outside of ourselves. At least, you know, I know that I wasn't. Maybe, you know, some of y'all were more mature as teenagers, more emotionally mature, whatever it is, but I certainly was not. I know that I was very, you know, selfishly minded. I didn't really care how my actions were going to make somebody feel. I didn't really care about, you know, any of that. Like, I was just very focused on doing what I wanted to do, doing things that pleased me, doing things that, you know, made me feel good. You know what I mean? So it kind of blurs the lines, and you don't really appreciate the very people in your life that are the ones that are orchestrating everything. Like, I was so blessed as a child, and I didn't recognize it until I grew up. Like, though, like I was saying before, I didn't always have everything that I wanted, my mom went above and beyond to make sure that me and my brothers, we always had everything that we needed, and she did everything to make that happen, every single thing. And I'm just so thankful for that, because I mean, there are some moms out there that, you know, are not a great example of that, and they do, you know, put themselves before their kids. They do put, you know, maybe a man before their kids. And I do think, you know, there's a biblical order. I do think it should be husband, wife, kids, but not to necessarily the extremity of like you are pouring into your husband and your kids are just getting scraps. You know what I mean? Because I think sometimes that is just something that exists. But I'm just so thankful for the childhood that I was able to have, and just for the way that I've seen my relationship change over the course of my life. It's been a beautiful thing, and I just, you know, I just want that to be the testimony for everybody. I don't want anybody to, you know, just stay in a place of hate or resentment, or stay in a place of just brokenness and hurt, because I promise you there is another side. I promise you there is healing. I promise you there is restoration that is available for you. I promise that your mom loves you, even if she doesn't know how to say it, even if she doesn't know how to show it, even if she, you know, maybe has done these things that have caused you hurt or caused you pain or brought you some form of trauma, or she is, you know, not met up to your expectations. I promise that your mom loves you. And I want to speak specifically to the eldest daughters, you know, because I am an eldest daughter. I technically do have an older sister, but we have different moms, so we didn't necessarily grow up together. But, you know, in the realms of my own home that I grew up in, I am an eldest daughter. You know, I'm the oldest sister to my 3 younger brothers. And I think sometimes there comes like an even bigger wedge that happens between the eldest daughter and the mom, because a lot of times as an eldest daughter, you know, we fail to recognize the sacrifice that our mom has given to us, because we ourselves are sacrificing so much as well, because naturally the eldest daughter ends up stepping into this kind of like second mom type of role. And not necessarily that that is a bad thing, because I think it's such a beautiful thing that just naturally as women and girls, we often carry this spirit of just a mom, you know, and I think that's such a beautiful thing. But a lot of times, you know, as a kid, you kind of feel like you are being, you know, forced to carry this weight that is not necessarily yours to carry. And I know for me growing up, like I definitely embodied that. wholeheartedly. I definitely feel like I was like the quote unquote, second mom of the home. I was definitely mothering, my little brothers all the time, from changing their diapers to feeding them to cleaning up after them to babysitting them. Like it definitely felt like I was, just essentially their second mom. And sometimes it is hard to appreciate or recognize the sacrifice that is happening in the midst of your own mother sacrificing these different things and these different elements and pieces of who she is, when, like I said, it seems as if you are sacrificing so much of yourself as well, and you're not necessarily sacrificing your adulthood, you are sacrificing your childhood, and in a way that sucks a bit more, and looking back now as an adult and one that is on a journey of just healing and then seeing things differently and learning from a new perspective, I look back and I recognize that, I shouldn't have been so resentful in those moments and just been so angry and just so upset that so much of my childhood felt like it was being like quote unquote robbed from me. I should have recognized like, man, like, my mom is so tired. She is so exhausted. She's always pouring out. She's always giving to everybody. And what happens too a lot of times is moms do not get the help and attention that they need, and they often just go push to the side and push to the back burner, and people do not give to moms as much as they need to. Moms don't have the community and the help that they need. What is it? The village. People say it takes a village, and a lot of times moms just simply do not have that village. And I don't think that as daughters, it's hard to recognize that as a kid, but I definitely think as you grow up and as you mature and you're looking back on certain things, that's where that grace and forgiveness should come in, because you should recognize that, like, man, like my mom didn't have a village. She didn't have, just a million people to call on and to help and to be there. And oftentimes too, our moms, they're battling so much mentally and they don't know how to talk about it. They don't know how to explain it, especially in the older generations where mental health was not as talked about, and we were like, or they were taught, really to just hide their feelings and to hide their emotions and don't say too much and don't do too much, and just kind of just shut up and deal with it like everybody else is. So that kind of like naturally makes you just go crazy, because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just bottling all this up. I'm having to show up in all these ways. I'm having to cook, I'm having to clean, I'm having to take care of the kids, I'm having to still somehow take care of myself. I'm still expected to show up at church, and I'm still expected to show up at all these games and all these events and to the doctor's appointments and to like all these things. Like there's such a heavy weight on moms, and they're just carrying it all, like not just their own burdens, but everybody in the household, even as wives and as moms, we're carrying the burden and the weight of our husband as well. Like we're just carrying so much on our backs, and that is a lot. And I think, looking back now, I'm happy that I was able to be there and help my mom in that way, and to show up for my brothers, and to just take a load off of her. And honestly too, like when I just think back, I think that's all that my mom needed. She just needed somebody to really just help take a load off. I think she was always so overwhelmed and super overstimulated, and I think because she was always, forced into a position of being hyper independent and making it happen and figuring it out, because she was kind of forced into this very adult role, as a 16-year-old girl to be a mom. That forces you to grow up very quickly. And when that happens, you kind of operate your life in this very fight or flight type of way, where you're always just trying to figure it out and making it happen and doing everything on your own, because you have to, because now you're not just living for yourself, but you are living for this other person that needs you. And I think naturally that just puts you into this constant, fight or flight. You are constantly just stressed and overwhelmed, constantly just moving so quickly, constantly, just in chaos. And I think for a lot of young moms, I don't think it's way until later in their life that they finally get to embrace just this rest and this peace. And I think that that's all my mom needed. And I'm so glad that now, as an adult, I'm able to just see that a lot more and recognize that a lot more and just give her the grace that she always deserved, but I just was not in a position to give. You know what I mean? And, if there are any oldest daughters out there, the elder daughters that also were in a position that, you were the second mom, I just want to, just inspire you to also, maybe change your mindset a little bit and recognize that, your sacrifice is something to be honored as well. Like you should be proud of it and happy about it and not necessarily so resentful about it, thinking that it was unfair or you didn't deserve this and you deserve so much more. Like, just think about Jesus, and just think about how many times the Bible tells us to be selfless and to, just exude this sacrificial kind of love and try to see it in a new way and just recognize, again, like I said in the beginning, that your mom is just a girl. Everybody is just trying to figure it out. And I think something that helps me too is I just try to put myself in that position. I'm like, man, what would I have done if I did become a mom at 16? Like, would I have even been able to carry it in the way that my mom did? Would I have even been able to figure it out in the way that she did or show up in the way that she did? And when I do think about that, I feel like I wouldn't have even been able to. Like, I feel like I wouldn't have been as strong. I would have been just crying all the time. I would have just locked myself in a room probably and just said, somebody else can come and figure this out. Like, I just don't think I would have had the strength to do what so many moms do. And that's why, like, this episode, I just pray that it feels like such a level of appreciation for moms and for the sacrifice that so many of y'all give, and so many of y'all, are just the strongest people in our society. Like, moms are so strong and just so courageous and so selfless, and they love so deeply, and they do so much that goes so unnoticed and so unappreciated, like I already said. And I want to, I myself, I want to be in a place where I am appreciating my mom more, and honestly just all the other moms in the world, just appreciating them so much more for the sacrifice that they give and just for who they are in general. And I pray that somebody else, can just do the same. So let's get into healing your mother wound. So we've been talking about, just my personal testimony and things like that. And I do want to talk about healing your mother wounds. And I think for me, when I was finally able to forgive my mom and really see things from a new light and just kind of change my mindset about certain things, it was when I took a step back and, kind of just distanced myself from the situation. And for some of you, that may mean you need to literally move away. Like, for myself, I moved from South Carolina to Florida, and now I live in Florida, which does bring about a lot of grievances, because now I'm longing for my family and I miss them so much. But that is what it is, and God may move me in the future, and I'll be able to be closer in the future. But for now, this is where he has my husband and I planted. So I'm just trusting that, he will just do what he needs to do. But I think the first step of healing in any regard, honestly, is to just take a step back and move away from it. Because when you are able to step back and kind of move away from the situation, you are able to just kind of attack it from a more clear mindset, and maybe you were able to get a bit more level-headed and just really just free up your mind a lot, so you were able to just hear from the Lord and just receive some different thoughts just regarding everything. And maybe you are not able to literally move away from your mom, but even just taking a mental space back, just taking away some of that access. Like, maybe you talk to your mom all the time, or maybe y'all hang out all the time, maybe you still live with your mom and there is still this tension and grievances attached to your mother and you guys' relationship. But even so, like, while you are still living at home, you could still just be mindful and kind of give a bit less of yourself and take a step back And I think the next step, that what helped me in healing my mother wounds, is learning what it means to truly let go and to release everything, no matter what it was that happened in your childhood, how she messed up in this area, or how she didn't do this, or she didn't do that, or this didn't go right, or this didn't happen in the way that you wanted to. What helped me in finally healing, the wounds that maybe were there from, my mother, was learning what it means truly and genuinely to let go. The Bible tells us over and over about this principle of letting go, and it's not so, we're just throwing stuff away, but it genuinely is for our own good. Everything that God tells us to do, it is with us in mind. He's not just telling us to do anything for no reason, and he just wants us to have a healthy life in general. He just wants us to go about things in a way that is positive and good. And when he is telling us to let go, it's because he knows that it is far more painful to hold on to something that is no longer serving you, and especially something that is just hurting you. Because think about when you are reminded of just these certain moments, or these certain times, or these certain things that have happened. Think about when you are thinking back to those things, like you are resurfacing all of the emotions and all of the pain, all of the trauma, and it's almost as if you're reliving it. And there have literally been times in my life where I have had anxiety attacks and panic attacks, and just been brought to these extreme, tears, and my heart is beating so fast just from a memory of something. So when God is telling us to let go, like, we have to model his character also, and just throw it into the sea of forgetfulness. Take what we are supposed to learn from it, apply it, and you have to throw some stuff away. You really do. And I want to read this verse. It says, it's Ephesians 4:31 through 32. And it says, let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, and evil speaking be put away from you, with all malice, and be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God in Christ forgave you. So just as God forgave you, we need to implement that as well. And that goes into, the next step also in healing your mother wounds, is to truly forgive them. And I think the first part of forgiveness is letting go. And the next part in the action of truly forgiving them is just to remember the same grace that God has given to you over and over and over again, and just apply that. No person is ever going to be perfect. No person is ever going to truly and fully meet all of your expectations. But again, that is where grace comes in. And you can acknowledge maybe the wrong that they did, and you can feel the hurt from it, but then you need to let it go, and then you need to forgive them. Because without those two steps, you are not going to be able to progress forward with anyone, not in friendships, not in family, not with your mom, not with your dad, not with your husband, not with your wife. You are not going to be able to move forward at all if you are not able to let go and forgive. And I see this so much, especially in marriage, because I feel like that's the closest relationship that you'll ever have. And in marriage, you're not going to have this marriage that lasts for 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 years if you are not willing to let go and forgive. Because there are going to be so many times where your husband pisses you off, and he does something wrong, and he says something stupid, or he does something in a way that it just doesn't make any sense, or whatever. And then in the same way that in this romantic love, and in this element of a husband and wife, or a girlfriend and boyfriend even, you see so many times that these couples, they break up and they get back together, they break up and they get back together. It's like very on and on. Not on and on, but on and off, and they are always very willing to forgive even the biggest extremities of the craziest things, because they love that person, and that love is superseding, whatever they have done. And we need to learn what it means to apply that same type of fiery love to everyone else in our life, because everyone else deserves that level of love and that level of forgiveness that we so often see poured out in romantic relationships. Your husband is not the only one that is worthy of forgiveness. Your girlfriend is not the only one that is worthy of forgiveness. Your boyfriend, whoever it is, like, they are not the only ones that is worthy of forgiveness. And also just be reminded that forgiveness does not make you weak. If anything, choosing to forgive is a very strong thing to do. And I want to read a few different verses. Mark 6:15, and this is Jesus speaking in this verse. It says, "But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses." So this is your duty to forgive, because if we are not willing to forgive, God is also not going to forgive us. Amen. And then I want to read Mark 11:25, and it says, "And whenever you stand praying, if you have anything against anyone, forgive him, that your Father in heaven may also forgive your trespasses." So that's just reiterating what we just read. If you have anything in your heart, anything that you are holding on to, forgive them. Forgive them, just as God does it for you. Because imagine if you went to God and you were praying to him and asking for something, and he was like, well, you remember what you did last week? Like, I mean, I ain't really like how you did that to that person, so like, I'm cool on that. Imagine if God showed up like that for us. Like, that would be crazy. So in the same way that God is so forgiving to us, we need to learn what it means to model his character and to do the same, especially for your mom. God is very intentional with the mom that he gave to you and with the dad that he gave to you. And he didn't do it for no reason. You don't need another mom. You don't need another dad, because God gave you yours for a reason. And I know growing up, and this is kind of, embarrassing and maybe a little like sad to admit, but I used to pray to God all the time. I'd be like, oh God, like, I just wish you gave me a different mom. I just wish you gave me a different dad. Like, my mom sucks. My dad sucks. Like, I just wish you would have given me different parents. Not recognizing that was just so insane to ask. Instead of saying that, I should have just said, God, why did you give me the mom that you gave me and the dad that you gave me? What is it about them that is so special for me? What is it that you intended to come from, these people that you allowed me to come from? Like, it's not for no reason. God has you in your family with your parents, with your mom, for a reason. And I think the more you begin to heal, the more you will begin to see, that your mom really is just a mirror of you. She's just a generation of you. I really feel like in mothers and fathers, we just see different elements of who we are modeled in just a different generation. Like, they're just, the millennial version of you or the boomer version of you. Like, they are just another element of you. Even if you grow up and you do something wildly different than your mom, you do something wildly different than your dad, and you are on the surface very different from your mother and father, I promise you, when you begin to look a little inward and you look inside of you, you will see just how much y'all are one and the same. And that's not a bad thing. Okay? It really is not. Now, the next element of healing your mother wounds is embracing a blank slate. In the same way that God washes us clean and he allows us to begin again and to begin anew, we have to do the same thing in our relationships, and especially with our mothers. We need to be able to just give them a new chance, give them another chance, and just come with a clean slate and just create a new picture. Maybe your childhood was garbage, okay? Maybe it was a bunch of crap, but just erase that and be like, okay, I didn't like this picture that we had in the past, and let's just go ahead and create a new one. And this time let's make it a little more beautiful. Like the last one, I don't know what was going on, but this time let's be more intentional. This time let's just show up in a different way and make it what it needs to be. Let's make it as beautiful as we want it to be, as creative as we want it to be, as colorful as we want it to be. You have the opportunity to change the narrative if you are just willing to embrace it. And I want to read another verse, and this is God speaking in Isaiah 43:25. It says, I, even I, am who blots out your transgressions for my own sake, and I will not remember your sins. Amen. So God, he blots out all of our transgressions, all of our sins, all of our flaws. He blots them out. And in the same way that God does that with us, we need to be willing to do that with our mom. And despite all the wounds, despite everything, we need to be able to blot it out and begin again, try again, make it new, make it different. And move forward. You know, and I love in this verse too how it specifically says, you know, God is saying specifically that he does this for his own sake. And I think that should be, you know, kind of something that we highlight and take note of, because in the same way that, you know, I was like saying before, that God doesn't do anything without reason, and he is doing it all for our good. And even here, you know, God is saying that he does this for his own sake. And I feel like that is just recognizing that, man, if he were to hold on to all of our mess and all of our crap and all of the ways that we have just done wrong and all of the sins that we had walked in, if he was to sit and remember all of that, he would not be able to truly love us unconditionally, because it would be warped by everything that we've done wrong. You know what I mean? So we have to do the same thing. Now, the next step, and we only have 2 more steps, okay? We're almost done. But the next step to healing your mother wounds is to relearn who they are and to see them from God's eyes. Because if you were only seeing them from the lens of your childhood and who you knew them to be and who they used to be and how they used to act and everything that they did do to you in the past, you are not going to be able to embrace the person they are trying to become, the person that you yourself are wanting them to be. You're never going to be able to embrace that and to really love this new version of them if you are still holding on to the old version of who they are. So if you want to heal your mother wounds, you need to relearn who they are, and almost like you're reintroducing yourself. You know, introduce yourself as, you know, now you're an adult, you know, and that in and of itself, you know, you are going to be walking into this new aspect of motherhood anyways, you know, whether you're coming from the aspect of being the daughter or being the mother in this situation, you know, just embrace it differently. You know, if you're a mom listening to this and maybe, you know, you've been trying to figure out how to better approach your daughter, how to better approach your son, you know, go to them in a new way. If you have a grown child, you know, go to them and approach them from that place. You know, meet the adult version of them, because maybe the child version of them, you couldn't handle them. They were just always in everything, always just making it so hard, just being super defiant, super disobedient. Like in my case, like I know I made my mom's life absolute hell. Okay, I can admit it. I don't necessarily think that I was a bad child, but I was most certainly a disobedient one, a very defiant one. And I know that as a mother, that had to have made her life absolutely terrible. Like, it had to be so annoying trying to parent a kid that was like me, that was just very, I don't know, I wanted to be grown so bad. I didn't want a parent. I didn't want any sort of authority, and that's not a good thing. And now, you know, as an adult, I'm having to go to God and repent for that, and also ask God, you know, how do I be a daughter? I don't know how to be a daughter, and even sometimes that shows up in my relationship with God, where there's this weird tension, and, you know, there's this not necessarily tension with God, but there is this weird, you know, reality where I know how to be, you know, a servant of God. I know how to be a student of God. Like, I know how to learn from him. I know how to receive from him. But sometimes, you know, I don't even fully know how to embrace what it means to just be his daughter. So not only am I learning how to be God's daughter, but I'm also learning what it means to be my mom and my dad's daughter as well. So, you know, if you are a mom or a daughter listening to this, or even a son, you know, just begin to ask God to help you learn what it means to be a daughter, and to learn how to walk in that. And, you know, if you're a mom, ask God to show you what it means to be a mom in maybe this new way, in this new season, and he will show you, you know, what it is that you need to do. And I wanted to read a verse as well. This is Philippians 4:8, and I think this is Paul speaking, and he says, "Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue, and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things." And I wanted to read that because I feel like as you are learning to embrace someone for, this new version of who they are, or even just learning how to see them from God's eyes, I feel like it starts with this very verse, what it is telling us to do. And it starts with really just meditating and thinking on the attributes of them that are good. If maybe you have had this negative perspective of your mom for your entire life, really challenge yourself and think, what about my mom do I really admire? What about my mom is actually really good? What about my mom is just super awesome? And begin thinking on those things more than you are thinking of the negative things, because your perception does become your reality. And if you are constantly focused on the negative, that is what your life is going to be. It's going to be negative. But if you begin to think on the good things, you will see the good things, begin to multiply in your life, because that is what you are focused on. And in the realms of, the relationship with your mother, if you are wanting that to grow and that is something that you are wanting to heal and mend, you have to start thinking on the good things. You have to start thinking on the things that are pure, the things that are lovely. And like we said before, you have to let go of those other things. And if there are some actual issues that need to be fixed within your mom's heart, or just within who she is in general, just take it to God. Because I promise you, the more that you just take whatever it is that is sitting heavy on your heart, if you have this annoyance, if you have this grievance towards whoever it is, when you take it to God and just pray on behalf of them, God will start to show up on behalf of you when you begin to intercede for people. If your mom struggles with this or this or this or that, take all of that to God and let him do the rest. And just leave it with him, okay? Because he's the best person to leave anything with. And as we are talking about, just thinking on all the things that are good, I wanted to read off some of the things that some people connected to me in my life. I texted a few people and I asked them, I was like, what is a positive thing that you would say about your mom? How would you describe your mom? As we were just talking about meditating on all the good things, I really just wanted to just talk about all of the positive ways that so many people see their mom, and what, I don't know, just some things that we could meditate on together. And I just pray that any mom that is listening to this, maybe, you don't have a child that is very open and very expressive regarding, how they see you or how they feel about you. But I hope that maybe listening to this can make you feel a little seen in the mom that you are. And maybe some of these words will resonate with you and make you feel just a little more loved, and knowing that, man, like, maybe my baby sees that in me as well. Because I promise you, even if your child is not necessarily saying it out loud, that doesn't mean that they aren't seeing it and that they don't know it. Because some people are just not, just super wordy. Some people think it's corny. Some people just simply don't, know how to embrace just that level of vulnerability. It can be kind of weird and kind of awkward, but I promise you, it's going seen. You are seen. Even if maybe your child doesn't see it right now, they will come to a place where eventually they see the goodness that is on the inside of you. And I pray that you are just able to know that and embrace that. So let's read some of these different things that some people have said about their mom. So somebody said, my mom is giving. Somebody else said, my mom has always helped everyone in the family. Somebody else said, my mom is very gracious. My mom is very compassionate. My mom is very helpful. My mom is very patient. And I love this one. Somebody said that my mom is like our sanctuary. She is our safe place in human form. Loving, caring, nurturing, praying, guide, strength, resilience. It all lives under one heartbeat. And I think that is so beautiful. Somebody else said, my mom is very consistent and dependable. My mom has a heart of gold. My mom goes out of her way to help the family and others. Homeless people come over to get something to eat all the time. Somebody else said, my mom is very selfless. And I really liked this one too, because it just points to the dynamic of change that happens in the realms of motherhood. There's a version of your mom that you know as a child, and then there's a version of her that you know as an adult. So this person said, growing up, I would say that my mom was very selfless. And now, as an adult, I would say that she is very nurturing. And I think that is so good. And then somebody else said, my mom is my world, my heart, my rock, my everything. Oh my goodness. And all the moms out there, I pray that that can just really encourage you and make you feel so loved. Oh my gosh. I just think all of those answers are so sweet. And I pray that today, especially, that all of your mom guilt just disappears and that you just know that you are so loved, you are so seen, you are so appreciated. And honestly, if nobody else sees you, God sees you. You know, the Bible says, work as if you were working for the Lord. Let all that you do be done into the glory of the Lord. So you showing up for your home, showing up for your babies, showing up for your adult children, your teenage children, even showing up for your husband, just showing up in the household in general, going to work every day. If you're a single mom, just trying to make it happen, or even you are a married mom and you still feel like, you know, you are just carrying this heavy weight on your shoulders, God is there to bear the burden. He is there to take that weight off. And, you know, I just pray that you know that even if nobody else sees you, God sees you. He knows the sacrifice you were putting in. He knows the love that you were pouring out. And I promise, even if you do not receive some sort of tangible reward or you don't receive some sort of audible recognition, please know that God is always keeping, you know, a record. You know, he knows. Nothing that you do, no good that you pour out is going unnoticed. And if anything, it is just simply watering the seeds of what God is wanting to do in your life. Amen. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep showing up, keep loving, keep being the mom that you are, and it will pay off. And the last thing that I want to say in healing your mother wounds is honestly to just try. Because I think a lot of times the only reason that things don't work out is because we just get to this place where we just give up. We feel hopeless. We don't want to try anymore. We don't want to give anything anymore. We don't want to show up anymore. And we just want to throw it away, throw it in the trash, because it's easier to just throw it away than to just put your best foot forward. So if you are trying to heal your mother wounds, I really just encourage you to try. Just literally try. Even if you try 1% more every single day, that 1% will add to something. It will help in some regard. And just know that it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to happen overnight. It might not even happen, you know, just super, like, I don't know, it's not going to happen in a way that you probably have mapped out in your head. Like, just throw all of your expectations in the trash and just be willing to show up anyways. You know, just be willing to put your best foot forward anyways, and to just keep trying again and again and again. Darn, I thought I wrote that verse down, but it's making me think of the verse where it says, you know, to forgive, you know, 70 times 7. And even the verse that says, you know, a wise man may fall. I think it says a wise man may fall 6 times, but he gets up, you know, a 7th time. So just keep getting back up, no matter how many times you fall, how many fights you have, no matter how hard it is. Just keep getting back up, and I promise you it will pay off in the end, and you will have that bond that I know that your heart is longing for, that I know your mom's heart is longing for, your daughter's heart is longing for, your son's heart is longing for. I promise you it will be worth it, and you will be proud of yourself in the end for just trying. You know, we want to break the cycle of this generational curse of division, this generational curse of separation, this generational curse of these mother wounds, these father wounds, whatever it is. We want to break that generational curse and be the difference. Amen. But anyways, I pray that this episode could encourage you. I feel like I was kind of just rambling a lot in the beginning, but I pray still nonetheless that you were able to take something, you were able to hold onto something, and you were able to leave from hearing all of my yapping with a new perspective and just a newfound appreciation for your mom. Because I know today, even from far away, I'm just going to try to pour into my mom and to every other mom in my life, even if it is not, you know, my actual mom. I'm just going to try to pour into every single mother out there and just ensure that she feels loved and appreciated. And I just pray that you do the same. And again, happy Mother's Day.